So we've got our layers built, we've got our first animation started. Let's go ahead and add some scale and opacity to this and take a look at maybe even motion blur and see how we can bring this a little bit more to life. Let's take a look. All right, so here we are in After Effects. I've got my null object here, and I'm going to jump out to 10 seconds. And I like this scale of 58%, so I'm going to click on the stopwatch next to scale. Then I'm going to jump back to 0 to my starting point. And then I can bring this down just a little bit, say 44%. That looks nice. Okay. Now if I hit spacebar, I can see that play out. You can see the green there. It was kind of building a preview for me, so it plays smoothly during my preview. And that's pretty good. You know, I like how it stops at 10 seconds. I don't need it to be any longer. So let's bring this, let's shorten our sequence up. Let's bring our start point or our end point back to here. And I could have just hit the letter N on my keyboard, or I'd drag that back too. There's two different options, a way to do that. Now what you can do is just right click in this gray section up here just below the numbers and say trim comp to work area. Boom, and just like that, we've got a 10-second clip. And you can see our keyframes are at the beginning and at the end. All right, so we've got that. Let's go ahead and add some opacity. So this time, I'm going to select my 3 layers. I'm going to hit Shift-T on my keyboard. Now there's a couple different ways you could go about doing this. Do I want to animate them individually, or do I want to animate them all together? Well, I could animate them all together simply by saying Null object, opacity there, coming back. See how that doesn't work? So since the null object isn't visible in your render, opacity has no bearing on the opacity of your layers below it that are parented to it, unless you parent the opacity of your layers to the null. So I'll show you what I mean. If I adjust the opacity of my null, nothing is happening. However, if I take the opacity of this bottom layer here, grab the pick whip tool, drag it up here to my null object opacity. See how it's turned red? Now, if I change the opacity of my null, that cog is now gone. So I can animate it that way. So let's do that again. So this time I'm going to take opacity, just drag it up to the opacity of that one. And one more opacity, drag it up to that one. So now they're all at 100. But if I come out here, say halfway out, I'll put opacity, come back, bring it to 0, and I hit Shift space. And over 5 seconds, they go from transparent to opaque. I might bring that back a little bit just by grabbing that keyframe, bringing it back to about a second or 2. So we've got a nice little fade in. Just like that. I'm going to hit Control S to save this project for right now. We're going to call this one animated logo. Alright, cool. So we've saved this so far. Just in case my system was to crash, it's always good to save it every so often. So now that we've got this, let's go ahead and add some motion blur. So far, the only thing moving really are all 3 of these cogs. So let's take a look at these. So I've got these 3 layers, and they are rotating and they are scaling. So 2 things are happening to these. Now, in our composition here, we've got a little, like 3 circles here. If I click those, this one automatically turns blue. This is our motion blur. Now, you don't necessarily want to have this on when you're animating and creating your content. When it comes time to review, you definitely you can turn that on and take a look at it. And so even though you activate it here, this acts as like a master, so I can turn it off up here while making sure, hey, this is ready to go for later when it's time to review it. So with that turned on, let's take a look. And with something like this that's moving very slowly, you're not going to see a whole lot of motion blur in this, but it will definitely help in some of your faster animations that you do, like some of the next ones when we create a lower third. So I hope this helps in getting you started into animation within After Effects. In the next lesson, we're going to look at the curves, the animation curves panel, and see how we can actually make these animations a little bit more lifelike and not so engineered and static and things like that, where it's like hard start, hard stop. So I'll see you there.